Everybody, I hope you had a great weekend. We are back. This is going to be your first and only assignment for the week. We have been going over dystopias, and we've read a couple of different dystopian stories. And so, what I want you to do for this week is to actually create your own dystopian society. Okay, so I'm just going to go through that and show you the different things that I want you to include in your dystopian society. And you can do this with PowerPoint, you can do this with Prezi, you can do this with Google Slides. If there is something else that you want to use, then please let me know. Canva is also something you can use as well. So if there's something else that you want to use besides PowerPoint or Google Slides, then let me know just to make sure that it'll work. Okay, so I'm going to go through this with you. So, backstory. So, every dystopian story has a backstory. So, whether that be a war, a natural disaster, or other terrifying event, and it is introduced early on in the story to set the stage. So, it could be a virus that targets a certain type of person or thing. Make sure that you describe the backstory for your dystopia. It must be 3 sentences minimum. Okay, so example, a virus comes and kills most of the women population. This will cause a dramatic decrease in the population. So the government probably would put in place some guidelines, some very strict rules for what happens when a female child is born, and some things that would need to happen if for the existing females to prevent them from getting sick. So they might they might only live in a certain place. I was actually watching a movie on Netflix. I think it was Netflix where this exact thing happened. A virus came and killed most of the women population, and it was about a father and his daughter who he was trying to pass off as his son, and how they were just trying to make it in a society where there were hardly no women, and everyone was trying to find women to rape them, to get them to keep the population going. So it was just like him trying to keep her safe the whole time. Okay. Also, it could be aliens invade and destroy Earth's ability to produce crops. We know we need crops for corn, potatoes, bananas, fruits, and vegetables. That's how we grow things. So if there were a virus, there were aliens invade and destroy our ability to produce crops, that means that we would have to find another way to produce fresh fruits and vegetables. So what would the government do? What kind of guidelines would the government put in place to make sure that we had enough food for everybody? Would food be rationed? So think about those kind of things. Think about something big that might happen, and then what the government would try to do to make sure that everybody was able to stay alive and be well. So, but remember that dystopias are the government trying to make things better, but actually making things worse. So keep that in mind when you are doing the backstory for your dystopia. Also, rights. So you need a Bill of Rights, at least 10 rules or laws the people in your society must live by. Okay? So whether that be this person, you only get 2 meals a day, or this person has to work such and such amount of hours per week in order to get food. So keep what are 10, at least 10 rules or laws. You can have more, but you have to have a minimum of at least 10 rules. Propaganda. So propaganda is it's going to be an informational text from the government of your society. So this can be a letter that's maybe written from the president or whoever's in charge of your society, a memo, a brochure, a political cartoon, etc. You can Google propaganda and use what you find, or you can make up your own as long as it fits into your society. So here are some examples so that we can do it. This is back when women were entering the workforce, when all the men left to go to war. All right, so women started stepping in and taking over some of the roles that men normally taking over some of the jobs that men normally held. All right, but since the men weren't there, the women stepped up. All right, so someone talked. This is another one where there was like around wartime. They were just saying like, be careful what you say to people because you don't want to give them information about. You don't want to give people information and then the enemy use that information in order to kill different groups. All right, here's a political cartoon where it says, I get the biggest crowds, believe me. Okay, so we know this is Donald Trump right here. And then here at the bottom, it says, death to America, Trump. And it has like the circle with the cross, like kind of like crossing him out. So he said, I get the biggest crowds, but they're not, the crowds of the people aren't for him. All right, so these are his enemies in the back. They're not crowds to support him. They're crowds to encourage his downfall. So those are kind of things like those. That's the kind of propaganda that I'm talking about. But of course, if you have questions, please reach out. I can help you. All right, government. Describe the government in your dystopia. What kind of government exists? So we know in our country we have a democratic government. All right. So what kind of government do they have? Is it like totalitarian? Who's in charge? Is there a president? All right. Who is in charge? Our country is divided into states. In the Hunger Games, their country was divided into districts based on what they were able to produce. Okay, so keep those things in mind. How are you going to divide up your society? Is it going to be divided up at all? So those are things that you want to think about because it's your society. How do you want it to be? All right, the citizens. Describe the average citizens in your dystopia. What do they wear? Describe their appearance. What do they do for a living? Do they have children? How do they behave on a daily basis? What do they do for fun? How do they respond to the government? Now, we know in China, there's pretty much only Chinese people. So here, we know in America, we always talk about how in America we are a melting pot. So we have a multitude of different nationalities, different races, different ethnicities, backgrounds, those kind of things. So in your dystopia, what do your citizens look like? Okay, so you answered these questions. Async is minimum. This is going to give us a really good picture of your society. And then but it can be, you can have whoever you want, whatever type of people that you want in your dystopia. It could be blacks only. It could be Hispanics only. It could be whatever you want to do for your dystopia. You can have it. You can have your dystopia divided into every state could be a different nationality, and then you can have the people who are mixed. They can be in their own state. So you decide how your citizens. You're going to describe your citizens. All right, infractions. So what happens to citizens who do not obey the government? Here in the United States, you are fined, you get prison time, you get community service, you get put on probation. Elsewhere, they might cut off a hand for stealing, etc. So in your society, what happens if people break the rules? That's all infractions are. Someone who breaks the rules. Okay, so it can be as harsh as you want it to be or as lenient as you want it to be. But do keep in mind that this is not just a regular society. This is a dystopian society. All right, setting. So describe the setting of your story. What does the place look like where your citizens live? What do the buildings, homes, cars, etc. look like? Do they have cars? Have they gotten rid of public transportation like cars and buses and metro links? Do they still have those things, or have they resorted to a previous era where we did not have those things? Okay, so what year is it? Is it 2020? Is it 2025? Is it 2150? Okay, so, or is it earlier? Or is it 1984? Is it 1655? You decide what the setting of your story is going to look like. So make sure that if you're setting your story like in the past, that you look up some information about what exactly was going on during that time, or so to make sure that you're not like putting cars back in 1786 when they hadn't existed yet, when they hadn't existed yet. So just keep that in mind when you're when you're thinking about what you're going to put for your setting. Okay, education. Describe the schools in your dystopia. Do they even have schools? What do the students learn? What do they do at school? What do they wear? How do they behave? Who is allowed to teach? How are teachers trained? Are they only allowing female teachers? Are women allowed to teach at all? Okay, so at one of the books that I read, City of Ember, the kids they went to school, and like once they hit, I think like middle school or high school, when they graduated, and I'm putting up the air quotes, when they graduated, they literally just picked jobs out of a hat. Like weird. Even if they didn't like the jobs, they still had to, they just picked a job. And if you were lucky, you got a job that you wanted. But if you, some people, they pick trash collector, and that's what they had to do for the rest of their lives. So keep that in mind. That was another dystopian book that I read. So keep that in mind as you're thinking about the education. Healthcare. What happens when someone is sick? Do they have doctors? Who pays for medical services if they are needed? What happens to the elderly? Do they have modern medicine? So 3 sentences minimum. So like, do they have vaccines? That's what I'm medicine, like ibuprofen. That's what I mean when I say modern medicine. Workforce. How does your society support itself? What does the workforce in your society look like? What types of jobs are available and how do you get certain jobs? I told you City of Ember that in that story, they literally picked jobs from a hat. So how old do you have to be to work? Do we have children workers? What type of businesses are available and who decides who gets which job? How are workers trained? How are workers compensated or paid? Compensation does not have to be in the form of money. Think outside of the box. Compensation could be food, clothes, protection, shelter, extra amenities, or favors. All right, you decide. It's your city, it's your country, it's your dystopian world. How are people paid? Okay. All right, last but not least, you're going to include a diary entry from a citizen in your community expressing his or her feelings about an event that has happened in your society or how you feel about the way the society works. You will have to make up this event and thoroughly explain it in your diary entry. All right, 8 sentences minimum. So let me give you an example. So in the Hunger Games, Katniss might have written a diary account of Reaping Day when Primrose's name was called. She might tell how she felt when she heard her sister's name and how unjust the system was, why she volunteered, etc., etc. Okay. How Prim should not have been able to even be in the reaping because she was young. She was a girl. Who knows? Okay, so you decide what you want, and because her name had only been entered one time, so you decide what the event is going to be and then explain it in your diary entry. Okay, so this is your assignment for the week. If you have any questions, please email me. Okay, that is it. I hope you guys have a great rest of the day. Please reach out to me if you have any questions. I will talk to you guys later. Bye.